Hey guys, tonight we wander into the shadowy alleyways of medieval Europe, not to meet a dashing cloaked hero, but to sit in the damp shoes of a very tired, very itchy assassin. Popular imagination makes you sleek, mysterious, maybe even noble. In reality, you're underpaid, underfed, and usually under someone's boot the moment your job goes wrong. You probably won't survive this career path, not because you'll be slain by some noble knight, but because of bad bread, worse ale, and the occasional swarm of angry geese. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is. It's always fascinating to see who's listening in the dark. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You walk through a narrow medieval street. Rain has turned the dirt into soup, and every step sucks at your boots with a disgusting slurp. You smell bread baking nearby, but not for you. That's for wealthy guild masters, not some wandering cutthroat without a guild badge. The world expects assassins to be sleek ghosts with poisoned rings, but you're just a human being lugging a knife, praying it doesn't rust before you get paid. Historians still argue whether professional assassins even existed in the way movies portray them. Some say it was all freelance thuggery, a hired hand one day and a petty thief the next. Others think there were loose networks, families or mercenary bands who specialized in dirty work. Either way, there was no secret academy with matching black uniforms. Your recruitment usually comes from a scowling man in a tavern who smells like onions and whispers, "Do you want to earn a few coins?" Not exactly cinematic. You dream of becoming a legend, but the truth is much duller. You'll probably spend more time running errands for your patron than actually plotting any daring kills. Most days, you're a courier of threats, a nighttime burglar, or just muscle for hire, standing in doorways to scare peasants who forgot to pay taxes. It's hard to feel dangerous when you're covered in fleas. And even if you ever take on a true assassination, slipping into a lord's manor, tiptoeing past guards, your reward is never guaranteed. Nobles are notorious for forgetting to pay their debts, especially to criminals they can have hanged instead. Worse, you can't even brag about your accomplishments. Boasting means getting caught. The best assassin is invisible, anonymous, and broke, because no one knows to hire you. You can't keep a LinkedIn profile reading "independent political problem solver." Already, you feel that creeping disappointment. You thought this life would be bold and thrilling, but it's mostly cold and exhausting. In the mud, surrounded by hunger and fear, you start to wonder if being a farmer's apprentice wouldn't have been safer, if slightly more boring. Remember this feeling. It'll follow you through every shadowed street and smoky tavern where jobs are on. Recruitment isn't glamorous. You're not chosen by destiny. Some shady lord just needs deniable labor. Recruitment isn't the stuff of whispered prophecies or glowing daggers. No one gazes into your eyes and declares you chosen. In medieval reality, you're usually picked up the same way someone hires a cart driver or a sheep shearer, through word of mouth in a smelly tavern. You're leaning against a warped beam, gnawing on a crust of bread hard enough to crack teeth, when a man with a fur-trimmed cloak that's seen better days sidles up and mutters, "Want to make some coin?" Congratulations, you're now on someone's very short and very expendable payroll. Historians still argue whether true assassin guilds ever operated in Europe outside exoticized stories of the Middle East. Some chroniclers describe shadowy brotherhoods, but most evidence points to something far less impressive: temporary arrangements. A disgruntled noble, a rival merchant, maybe even an angry bishop hires you through an intermediary. There's no blood oath, no lifetime loyalty. Just here's half now, the rest after the job, assuming you live. And you probably won't live. Your new employer may speak in lofty terms about restoring justice or defending honor, but don't be fooled. You're not an avenger of wrongs, you're an errand boy with a knife. Sometimes, you're not even told the reason for the job. You nod as if you understand court politics, while secretly wondering if this target is guilty of treason or just guilty of having a better wine cellar. Quirky tidbit. Recruitment often happens through families or close friends. Picture your cousin whispering at a wedding feast, "You're quick on your feet and you owe me for that goat I lent you." There's a bishop needs silencing. Medieval job fairs, if you can call them that, were more awkward than inspiring. And the process isn't glamorous. You're not given black leather armor or exotic poisons. Instead, you're told to wait in the rain behind a stables until nightfall, then follow some half-drunk steward to a smoky back room where a noble refuses to look you in the eye while handing over a few grubby coins. You're just a tool, one he can discard or denounce at the first whiff of trouble. Even the act of agreeing feels risky. If you're overheard, you're branded an outlaw. If you refuse, the same man might decide you're safe or dead. No wonder so many would-be assassins were press-ganged rather than recruited politely. The worst part, there's no career ladder. You don't start as an apprentice killer and climb your way to master of shadows. The moment you succeed, people want you gone, because you know too much. And the moment you fail, well, you won't be around to complain about unfair working conditions. As you walk out of that tavern, a few coins heavier but your soul slightly lighter, you realize there's no going back. The village priest would refuse you communion if he knew. Your neighbors would spit at your feet. And the noble who hired you, he'll swear on his gilded Bible that he's never seen you before in his life. You were hopping for destiny. What you got is a side training in the dirt. Forget secret temples. You learn knife work behind a tavern from a drunk cousin. Training to be an assassin is not a mystic ordeal in a torchlit monastery courtyard. It's a grubby, improvised affair that mostly involves bruises and bad advice. You don't scale marble walls with silk ropes or master exotic swordplay under a serene master. No, your education happens in back alleys, stables, and occasionally the pig pen behind your cousin's cottage. Your mentor, if you're lucky enough to have one, is usually someone with slightly more experience at not getting caught. He smells of ale and keeps his dagger in his boot, which is both practical and unhygienic. Lessons are short and painful. How to stick someone without them sticking you first, how to slip through a doorway without being seen, and most importantly, how to run faster than the man chasing you. If you were hopping for elegant martial arts, forget it. Your training is more, fall down this haystack until you stop landing on your face. Historians still argue whether specialized assassin training schools ever existed outside rare political or religious contexts. Some sources speak of disciplined sects, especially in the East, that groomed killers with rigorous drills. But for the typical European shadow worker, training was piecemeal and practical. You learned from soldiers, thieves, or anyone desperate enough to share tips for a mug of beer. Here's a quirky tidbit. Many skills overlapped with other trades. A roof thatcher could teach you how to climb buildings without breaking tiles. A butcher could show you where to stick a blade if you absolutely had to. And a pickpocket knew more about moving unnoticed through crowds than any noble fencing master. This wasn't about elegance. It was about survival. The gear you practice with is laughable. Instead of balance-throwing knives, you get a kitchen blade. Instead of soft-soled boots, you wear whatever shoes haven't rotted through yet. Your training ground is a slippery street where geese attack without warning, because medieval geese take their guard dog duties seriously. The lessons extend beyond weapons. You're taught how to look harmless, to smile at guards and nod at merchants while secretly calculating escape routes. You practice fake accents to pass as a traveler from another shire. And you learn to keep your head down during festivals. Nothing ruins an assassination more than drunkenly dancing in front of your future victim the night before the job. The final exam isn't formal. One day your patron just decides you're ready and points you toward a target. No cheering crowd, no diploma, just a quiet, "Don't mess this up." And if you do mess it up, well, that's why you were paid half in advance. You probably won't be around to collect the rest. By the end of your training, you've picked up more blisters than wisdom, more paranoia than confidence. You realize success isn't about perfect sword strokes or rooftop somersaults. It's about staying unnoticed, keeping your stomach from growling during stakeouts, and knowing when to run so fast. Gear is overrated, no poison diamonds, just a rusty dagger and a cloak that smells like goat. Gear is supposed to make you feel dangerous, right? In your dreams, you picture a gleaming dagger balanced perfectly in your palm, or maybe a poison ring that looks like something out of an illuminated manuscript. Reality: you're holding a blade so dull it could double as a butter knife, and your cloak of shadows smells strongly of goat because it really is just a goat hide cloak. Most assassins in medieval Europe didn't have access to specialized weapons. Historians still argue whether exotic tools, spring-loaded crossbows, hollow poison needles were ever more than rumor. Most accounts describe simple farm tools or hunting gear pressed into deadly service. That elegant stiletto, try a kitchen knife. That legendary throwing star, maybe a rock you picked up on the road. Your patrons rarely give you equipment. Nobles don't want to leave evidence, and if you get caught, they'll claim you're a thief who robbed their stables. So you cobble together your own kit: a dagger that rusts in the rain, a bowstring that frays at the worst moment, and a belt pouch that never quite closes, spilling coins at the least convenient time. If James Bond were alive in this century, he'd cry. A quirky tidbit: many killers used what they could carry without suspicion. A carpenter's awl looked like a harmless tool until it didn't. A baker's peel, that long wooden spatula, could serve as a weapon in a tight alley. In towns, even carrying a sword could draw attention, so you had to pass for a tradesman, not a warrior. You also learned that fancy gear can make you worse at your job. Heavy armor clanks in the night. Exotic blades stand out when guards describe you. And don't even think about poison vials. They leak, smell strange, and occasionally kill their owner faster than their target. You once watched a fellow professional accidentally wipe his mouth after handling deadly herbs. His career ended faster than his lunch. Instead of being a master of gadgets, you become a master of improvisation. Need to silence someone? A pitcher of ale accidentally spilled in their lap works wonders for distraction. Need a quick exit? A crowded market stall full of onions makes a fine smoke screen. Well, odor screen. You carry simple tools: rope, a short blade, maybe a wax candle to melt through seals. Nothing that would impress a bard, but everything you can ditch if the watchmen ask questions. By the time you're ready for real work, you've accepted the ugly truth. No one's going to knight you for your craftsmanship, and no one's going to hand you a mysterious black chest filled with shiny weapons. You're not a legend. You're a tired figure in a muddy cloak clutching gear that looks like it came from a barn sale. And in this business, the less impressive you look, the longer you survive. Traveling means slogging. You walk for days on blistered feet while dodging toll collectors and bandits. Travel sounds romantic until you have to do it with blisters and a price on your head. You picture yourself gliding over rooftops from one city to the next, but medieval assassins walked everywhere. Roads are little more than ruts full of mud, dung, and puddles wide enough to swallow a horse. Forget sleek black horses or secret carriages. You're lucky to have both boots intact by the time you reach your target. Walking isn't just exhausting, it's dangerous. Every bridge demands a toll you can't afford. Every village has guards or nosy locals who demand to know your business. And if you think you can just slip through unnoticed, remember, strangers stand out. People rarely traveled far from home. A face no one recognizes gets suspicious looks and questions you can't answer. Historians still argue how mobile common killers actually were. Some say most assassins never left their own region, working close to home under cover of familiarity. Others think political killings sometimes required long treks, weeks of slogging along trade roads where merchants outnumbered travelers with sinister motives. Either way, you're walking. A lot. Quirky tidbit: bandits don't care that you're technically a criminal too. They see your coin pouch, not your resume. More than one aspiring assassin has been robbed, stripped, and left barefoot long before they ever reach their intended victim. Sometimes you end up hearing a guide or traveling with pilgrims just to avoid looking suspicious. But imagine the irony, joining a holy procession while planning to kill someone at the next town over. And the weather, a cruel companion. Rain soaks your cloak until it smells like a drowned goat. Snow freezes your toes solid in your cheap shoes. In summer, heat bakes you alive and sweat betrays your nervousness to anyone watching. You dream of inns with warm fires, but mostly you sleep in barns, haylofts, or on the open ground, if the dogs don't chase you off first. Even food becomes an ordeal. The stale bread you bought 3 towns back now tastes like wood. The ale is warm, sour, and makes you sluggish when you need to stay sharp. More than one killer has missed their mark because they spent the night crouched in a ditch, doubled over from spoiled stew. By the time you finally see the crooked spire of your target city on the horizon, you're half delirious with fatigue. You arrive not as a sleek predator, but as a limping traveler praying your boots hold together one more mile. Your noble patron promised you gold, but you're starting to suspect you'll spend it all on new shoes. If you disguises fail constantly. A fake merchant act unravels fast when you can't count past 20. You always imagined disguises would be thrilling. Mysterious masks, clever costumes, maybe even a fake mustache worthy of a traveling bard's tale. In reality, disguises fail constantly, usually because you're bad at them or because the world around you refuses to cooperate. Passing as a wandering merchant. Great idea, until someone asks you the price of wool in Flanders and you can't count past 20 without taking your boots off. Pretending to be a pilgrim. Easy enough, until a real pilgrim asks what relic you came to see, and you accidentally name a saint who doesn't even exist. Historians still argue how effective medieval disguises really were. Some chroniclers describe killers slipping into castles dressed as monks, while others point out that most villages were small enough that a strange face stood out like a chicken wearing shoes. Whatever the case, one thing's clear: fooling people took more than throwing on a cloak. A quirky tidbit: real assassins sometimes relied on dirt rather than silk to hide themselves. Looking too clean was suspicious. A man covered in dust and smelling faintly of turnips looked like every other peasant trudging to market. Ironically, being obviously poor was the best disguise of all. But it only worked if you could play the part, down to knowing how to grip a hoe or carry a basket of onions without looking like you. Never seen one before. Of course, the elements betray you. A sudden rainstorm turns your respectable merchant cloak into a muddy rag, and the bright dyes in your stolen tunic bleed everywhere. A wind gust blows your hood off just as the gate guard glances your way. And then there are the dogs, always the dogs. No disguise hides your scent from a village hound, which will bark at you as if you were juggling knives. Even your voice can betray you. You practice fake accents by the fire, only to forget which one you're using halfway through a conversation. I'm from York, I mean Rouen. Yes, Rouen. Lovely cathedral, terrible, cows. Nothing draws suspicion like sweating through a bad lie. Your greatest trick isn't changing how you look, it's learning when to blend into a crowd. Better to be an invisible shadow among beggars, merchants, and washerwomen than some mysterious stranger everyone remembers seeing near the city gate. But no matter how well you think you blend, there's always that one market gossip who squints at you and mutters, "Never seen him before. Bet he's trouble." And she's usually right. Intel is garbage. Half your targets are rumors, the other half already dead when you arrive. Information is supposed to be your greatest weapon except when it's rotten. And in the medieval world, most intelligence is as reliable as a tavern rumor after 3 pints of ale. You're told a nobleman sleeps in his west tower, but when you arrive after weeks of trudging through rain, you find the tower is really a chicken coop. Worse, the man you're supposed to kill, already dead of dysentery 2 months ago. Historians still argue whether medieval assassins relied on organized spy networks or just tavern whispers. Some royal courts had messengers and informers who traded news like grain, but for freelancers like you. Intel came from talkative stable boys, drunken merchants, and the occasional bribed gate guard. It's less cloak and dagger, more mud and guesswork. A quirky tidbit: there are records of killers arriving to strike targets who had already fled, sometimes tipped off by the very patron who ordered the job, just to test the assassin's loyalty. Imagine traveling for weeks on foot, hiding from bandits, only to discover your target mysteriously left town yesterday. You can't even send an angry letter. Parchment is expensive, and who's going to deliver mail for a wanted murderer? Your briefings, if you can call them that, are full of holes. A servant swears the master of the manor leaves the gate unlocked at night. Except tonight, the gate is barred, guarded by 3 men with halberds and a very alert dog. Or someone says the target walks alone in the garden every dawn, until you learn he's bedridden with gout and hasn't seen the sunrise in months. When your information fails, you improvise. That means more time lurking in alleys, more coins spent bribing talkative washerwomen, and more risk of someone noticing you've been standing near the same bread stall for 3 days. The longer you linger, the greater the chance a local busybody wonders why you're not moving along like a normal traveler. And when rumors contradict each other, you're forced to pick which stranger sounds less like a liar. Does the blacksmith know the truth, or is he just bored? Did that monk actually see your target, or is he mixing up one rich man in a fur cloak with another? You start to suspect everyone's lying, including your patron, and maybe even yourself, for believing you can pull this off. By the time you finally locate your quarry, you're exhausted, starving, and sick of everyone's voice. You no longer feel like a sleek predator on the hunt. You feel like a door-to-door salesman who's very, very bad at finding the right. Patrons are sketchy nobles promise gold but pay in copper, if they pay at all. Your patrons are supposed to be powerful and reliable, but in truth, they're the slipperiest part of this whole miserable trade. The noble who hires you whispers of gold, titles, maybe even protection from the law, but what he really offers is a handshake you'll regret. In a world where promises are sealed with wine instead of written contracts, you're trusting someone who could have you hanged tomorrow and still sleep soundly on goose feather pillows. Historians still argue how often assassins work directly for nobles rather than through intermediaries. Some chroniclers describe lords personally commissioning killings in smoky halls, while others insist they always kept a layer of deniable middlemen, stewards, cousins, or shady merchants. Either way, it's your neck on the line, not theirs. A quirky tidbit: there are cases where patrons deliberately betrayed their hired killers to show political innocence. A duke hires you to stab his rival, then tips off the local sheriff just before you act. You're caught in the courtyard, dagger in hand, while the duke loudly praises the guards for their diligence. You rot in a dungeon while he swears he's never seen you before. Payment is never guaranteed. Nobles are experts at disappearing just when the job is done, or at claiming you botched it even if your blade did its work perfectly. The man died, yes, your patron might sneer, but not quickly enough. No payment. You can't exactly take him to court, especially since the judge probably drinks at his table. Sometimes you're paid in copper coins that barely cover your food, or in favors that turn out worthless. A noble promises to protect you if things go wrong, but when they do, he's suddenly on pilgrimage in another kingdom. Even worse are church officials who hire you for divine justice, then wash their hands of you faster than holy water in Lent. You learn to take whatever you can up front. Half now, half later at least ensures you won't starve on the road. Some killers even demand goods instead of coin: a cloak, a sturdy pair of boots, or a few days' shelter. At least you can't be cheated out of bread you've already eaten. By now you've stopped thinking of patrons as masters or allies. They're weather vanes, turning whichever way political winds blow. You're just another disposable pawn on their game board. If you fail, they curse you. If you succeed, they fear you because you know too much. Either way, you never get invited to the victory feast. Food is questionable stale bread, and warm ale don't fuel precision strikes very well. Food is supposed to fuel a killer's precision, right? A steady hand, a sharp mind, the energy to vault a garden wall. Instead, you survive on meals so depressing they'd make a monk weep. Forget rich banquets or secret rations from your noble patron. You're living on stale bread, onions, and whatever you can scrounge from a roadside market. Historians still argue whether professional killers traveled with coin purses fat enough to buy decent meals or lived hand-to-mouth like common laborers. Judging by most accounts of wandering mercenaries, and they're the closest thing to documented assassins, it's safe to say no one was eating roast swan every night. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some killers carried journey cakes, basically rock-hard biscuits baked to last weeks. They didn't taste like much, but they wouldn't rot. The downside, they were so tough you had to dunk them in ale until they went soft, by which point the ale was warm and sour. Your choice is between breaking a tooth or drinking bread-flavored swamp water. Taverns offer little relief. Most roadside inns serve thin pottage, a sad stew of beans and cabbage, or gristly meat pies of questionable origin. You learn fast not to ask what's inside. An ale, the universal drink, is weak enough to hydrate but strong enough to leave you sluggish when you need to stay sharp. More than one assassin has blown their cover by nodding off in a corner after just one mug. Eating on the move is worse. You crouch by a ditch, gnawing a crust that tastes faintly of mold, while watching your target's manor on the horizon. There's no glamour in chewing cold peas when you're supposed to be planning a deadly strike. Sometimes, a passing pilgrim takes pity on you and shares a hunk of salted fish. It's kind, but it makes you smell like a walking barrel. And then there's the paranoia. Did someone tamper with your food? Was that stew overly salty because the cook's careless, or because your patron would rather not pay you in coin at all? Medieval killers learned to eat simple, suspicious meals and to carry their own drink, even if it tasted like vinegar. By the time you actually reach your target, your stomach growls louder than your conscience. You're lightheaded, irritable, and not exactly the picture of cold-blooded precision. If anyone asked you right then whether you'd rather have gold or a hot loaf of bread, you might honestly choose the bread. Assassins versus disease. Fleas, dysentery, and bad water kill more killers than guards ever do. You thought being an assassin meant dodging swords and crossbows, but your deadliest enemies are far smaller: fleas, lice, and whatever's floating in the nearest well. Medieval disease kills more killers than armed guards ever do. One moment you're crouched in the shadows, waiting for your target to stumble out of a feast. The next, you're doubled over in a ditch, losing every crumb of stale bread you've eaten for 3 days. Historians still argue whether itinerant criminals like assassins had shorter lifespans than ordinary peasants. Many think constant travel exposed you to every plague, fever, and bad barrel of ale along the road. Others suggest you simply died in the same numbers, but left fewer records because, well, people don't write glowing obituaries for hired murderers. A quirky tidbit: some killers tried to ward off sickness with bizarre folk remedies, garlic necklaces, vinegar-soaked rags over the face, or even carrying dried toads as plague charms. Imagine sneaking through a noble's garden with a toad swinging in your pocket like a tiny, unlucky bell. Did it work? Probably not. Did it make you smell less appealing to anyone nearby? Absolutely. Poor hygiene makes every mission miserable. You're itchy from lice, your cloak never truly dries, and every cut threatens to turn septic. A simple scrape from climbing a wall can puff up and burn for days, making you too stiff to hold a dagger steady. Meanwhile, dysentery, or as you call it, running for your life in entirely the wrong direction, turns even routine stakeouts into urgent sprints to the nearest bush. And don't forget fevers. There's no stopping to recover. If you're sick, you keep moving or the job passes to someone else. You drag yourself along, sweating under a wool hood in midsummer, your vision swimming as you pray your target dies quickly, because you might beat them to it. Sometimes disease even helps you by accident. A noble drops dead unexpectedly, and your patron counts it as mission accomplished. But you get no bonus pay for letting nature do the dirty work. Worse, if a plague sweeps the region, locked gates and quarantines make it impossible to reach your mark at all. Imagine explaining to your employer, "Sorry, couldn't kill him. The Black Death got there first." By the time you realize sickness is a constant companion, you've stopped fearing guards with spears. You fear bad stew, filthy water, and that strange ache in your joints you can't shake. The only thing stealthier than you in this era is disease, and it always hits its target. Weapons break mid-job, a sword snaps, a bowstring frays, and suddenly you're improvising with a rock. If disease doesn't kill you, winter might. Forget romantic notions of snow-dusted castles. Traveling as an assassin in December is misery on a frozen stick. Roads turn to ice-rutted traps, horses slip, and every village inn is full of coughing strangers huddled around smoky hearths. You're often forced to camp in the open, shivering beneath a threadbare cloak while frost stiffens your boots like wood. Hypothermia isn't a word you know, but you feel it gnawing your bones. Fingers go numb first, then toes, and you're terrified of falling asleep in the cold because you might never wake up. Firewood is scarce and expensive, and the damp twigs you find in the hedgerows hiss uselessly instead of catching flame. Sometimes you break into empty sheep sheds, curl up in straw, and hope the shepherd doesn't greet you with a pitchfork come morning. Food is even harder to come by. In summer, you might snatch apples from orchards or berries from the roadside. In winter, you chew leather straps to trick your stomach into thinking you've eaten. Bread is rock hard, meat rare and usually rancid, and ale is watered down or sour. Some assassins resort to stealing from church granaries, which guarantees eternal damnation, assuming you don't get caught and hanged first. Then there's the sheer difficulty of killing anyone in these conditions. Metal weapons bite your hand with icy teeth and bowstrings freeze stiff. Climbing walls while coated in frost is like trying to scale greased glass. A single slip can snap your ankle, ending both the mission and your career. Even footsteps betray you, snow crunches and frozen ground echoes. You start praying for sleep, which hides sound, even though it soaks you to the skin. Ironically, winter sometimes protects your targets. Nobles stay indoors, surrounded by roaring fires and too many guards with nothing better to do. They're less likely to wander into alleys where a shadow could end them. When assassinations do happen in cold months, they're usually messy affairs. Axes through doors, poison in hot wine, or ambushes on lonely winter roads where both victim and killer risk dying of exposure before anyone finds the body. Worst of all are snowstorms that trap you in strange towns. You're forced to linger, pretending to be a harmless pilgrim or traveling peddler while suspicious locals eye you up. Each day stuck means more expense, more risk of discovery, and more chance your quarry slips away. You curse the sky, your frozen fingers, and every single flake drifting down like powdered mockery. Some killers adapt by timing their work for spring and summer only, but reliable contracts don't wait for good weather. If the pay is high enough, you travel in any season, your teeth chattering like dice in a cup. You dream of southern lands where winters are mild, but your jobs keep pulling you back to frostbitten villages and icy rivers. And if you think a dagger wound hurts, try frostbite. At least the dagger doesn't take your fingers off one by one. Surveillance is awful. You spend weeks hiding in haystacks, watching doors that never open. If cold and hunger were not enough, there is another invisible enemy on the road: disease. Unlike blades and crossbows, it doesn't announce itself with a glint of steel. You never see it coming. One day you feel fine, the next you are sweating under your cloak, stumbling along a muddy lane, wondering whether it was the sour ale or the bite of some unseen curse that made your stomach churn. Travelers, especially the kind who skulk in the shadows, are perfect carriers. You share straw pallets with strangers, drink from public wells, eat food touched by dirty hands. In smell of smoke and unwashed bodies, their rafters alive with fleas. A single cough in a crowded tap room can mark the beginning of your death sentence. The Black Death is decades away or centuries past, depending on when you happen to be alive, but lesser plagues are constant companions. Dysentery, sweating sickness, agues that shake your body until you can barely hold a dagger. When sickness catches you on the road, you have two choices: stop or keep moving. Stopping means lying in some filthy hovel, delirious, praying no one robs you while you sleep. Moving means dragging your fevered body mile after mile, dizzy and half blind, knowing each step might be the one that makes you collapse face first in the mud. Assassins don't have the luxury of being weak. If you miss your moment, the target tightens security or flees altogether. There are no clean hospitals or kindly nurses. At best, you find a hedge witch who burns herbs and mutters charms over your head, or a leech-happy barber surgeon eager to drain bad humors from your veins. Most of their cures do more harm than good. You swallow bitter concoctions of ground roots and hope they don't kill you faster than the fever. Some killers keep a stash of their own remedies. Dried garlic, wormwood, may be a lucky amulet, because when you make enemies for a living, you can't afford to depend on the mercy of strangers. The worst part isn't the pain, but the fear of being recognized when you're weak. A staggering, pale figure draws questions. A sweating, shivering man can't climb walls, can't steady a blade, can't fight off a suspicious town guard who wonders why your purse is heavy but your story is thin. If you're too ill to travel, you hide in the outskirts of town or rot in a barn loft, praying the farmer's daughter doesn't notice your rattling breath above the hay. And then there are the deliberate sicknesses. Some assassins use poison rather than blades, but it's a double-edged trade. Preparing toxins means grinding powders and boiling herbs that can make you ill if the wind shifts wrong. You have to test your tinctures carefully, on stray dogs, on rats, sometimes even on yourself in minuscule doses, because a trembling hand at the wrong moment could mean you collapse before your victim ever takes a sip. Disease is a constant reminder that you're not invincible. No matter how fast you run, how sharp your knife, how clever your disguise, one unseen speck of filth on a mug or under a fingernail can fell you quicker than the best armed guard. You learn to drink only from fast-moving streams, to sleep off the main road, to keep your own cup if you can. And even then, sometimes you wake in the dark, your mouth dry as ashes, wondering if this time your luck has run out. Unexpected witnesses, chickens, dogs, and nosy neighbors ruin more stealth jobs than palace guards. If sickness gnaws at your body, suspicion gnaws at your mind. In the assassin's trade, paranoia isn't a burden. It's a survival skill sharpened to a razor's edge. Every stranger on the road might be a friend, or a thief, or a hired blade looking for you. Every window left open might be an invitation or a trap. When you pass through towns, you keep your hood low, your purse hidden, your ears pricked. The wrong glance from a merchant can mean he's recognized your face from a wanted poster. The too friendly welcome of a tavern keeper can mean he's already counting the coins he'll earn for turning you in. Even the beggars sometimes sell secrets for bread. That's why an assassin learns to walk like no one special. You don't strut, you don't skulk, you blend. You buy your ale with the same clumsy hands as any laborer, curse the rain like any farmer, nod to the reeve like any passing pilgrim. You make your voice dull, your gait unremarkable. You don't stand out unless you choose to, unless it's to lure someone else into making the fatal mistake of thinking you're harmless. But this constant vigilance wears on you. Nights spent staring at the ceiling, listening for footsteps that never come. Meals choked down quickly in case someone slips something into your cup. Even sleep becomes dangerous. You lie down, cloak drawn up, and wake at every creak of timber, every gust of wind against the shutters. After months of this, you forget what it feels like to truly relax. Paranoia also changes how you treat people. A stranger offering kindness, suspicious. A fellow traveler who wants to share the road, dangerous. You keep your knife close even when laughing at someone's joke, because laughter dulls the edge of fear, and fear keeps you alive. Many assassins never marry, never make friends outside their trade, because a soft heart can be used as a weapon against you. And if you do love someone, you hide them far from the world, for every rival knows that threatening what you love is easier than facing what you are. Of course, sometimes the threat is real. Rival guilds, jealous thieves, wronged employers. Someone is always watching for weakness. That shadow trailing you down an alley might be coincidence, or it might be a hired spy testing your reflexes. That farmer who offers you lodging might have a son with a crossbow. You live by guessing which dangers are real and which ones live only in your head, knowing that being wrong just once can end everything. The irony is bitter. You kill in silence, but the fear you sow circles back to you. For every merchant who sleeps uneasily after crossing your guild, you sleep uneasily knowing merchants sometimes hire better blades. And when you're constantly on edge, even innocent things, children laughing in the street, a door slamming in the wind, make your heart lurch like an alarm bell. But paranoia has its uses. You notice patterns others miss. You spot the man at the market who looks twice at your belt pouch. You catch the whisper of steel before the attack comes. You see the glint of eyes watching from a second-story window as you slip past in the dark. Your mind becomes a map of invisible lines. Danger here, safety there, escape always planned. Still, you wonder sometimes if living like this is worth it. When every kind word is a threat, every warm bed feels like a snare, every friend might be an enemy. You begin to wonder what's left of you when the blade is finally sheathed. Are you still a man? Or just a shadow that kills and hides until it vanishes in turn? And so you keep moving because movement means you're harder to find. You never linger long enough to be betrayed. The road is your ally and your curse. And in the silence of lonely miles, you sometimes whisper to yourself, not prayers but promises, trust no one. Trust no one. Trust no. Escape routes collapse. Drawbridges rise, city gates close, and you end up swimming with your boots on. Your guild, if you're lucky or unlucky enough to belong to one, knows all this. They count on it. The guild gives protection, yes, but it also owns you in 100 quiet ways. You can leave, but you'll be followed. You can defy orders, but you'll sleep lighter than ever. The guild doesn't tolerate loose ends. Why would assassins of all people allow them? The organization itself is a shadow within shadows, layered like an onion where each peel hides something sharper beneath. New recruits learn only a name for their handler, never a face. Messages are dropped in hollow fence posts, beneath loose floorboards, slipped into your hand folded like scraps of trash. The pay is generous, but every coin is stamped with silent obligation. Initiations vary, but they all break something in you. Perhaps you're sent to kill someone you know, an old teacher, a distant cousin, just to prove your loyalty is stronger than your heart. Or you're ordered to sit in darkness for days, no food, no water, until your mind bends and hallucinates, and then you're told to strike at phantom enemies to prove you can kill even what you can't see. Sometimes initiates are branded or tattooed in places no one notices, so if you try to run, your own skin betrays you. Rules are strict and oddly bureaucratic. You don't kill without sanction because that draws heat on the guild. You deliver proof of every completed job, a token, a ring, a seal from the victim's house. You pay dues like a merchant in a guild hall, except instead of coins it's favors, information, obedience. Fail to pay, and suddenly you're on the guild's list instead of its payroll. The guild also enforces order in the underworld. A noble wants to hire a blade. He contacts the guild through coded phrases in a tavern or gift deliveries that conceal instructions. A petty thief wants someone removed. He pays triple rates because murder has a cost. If two guilds compete in one city, there's usually blood in the streets until one side agrees to leave, or both agree on territories and terms. When you return from a job, there's no applause, no feast. Just a nod from your handler, maybe a sealed packet with your next target. Payment is hidden in plain sight. A pouch of coins sewn into an old cloak, a purse tied beneath a bridge at midnight. If you're careless, someone else might take it and the guild won't replace it. Carelessness pays its own wage, they say. The guild teaches more than killing. It teaches patience, languages, disguises, poisons. You learn to mimic accents, to mix powders that make a man sleep so deeply he never wakes, to wear a merchant's smile while weighing a noble's purse against his pulse. The best assassins barely draw a blade at all. Sometimes a whispered rumor or a carefully aimed lie does the work for you. And yet, for all this loyalty and craft, the guild feels no affection for its members. If you become troublesome, if you draw attention, you're erased as neatly as any target. The man who once taught you how to hold a dagger in the dark may one day hold that dagger against your throat. Sometimes you wonder, is it better to be a lone wolf, hunted by everyone, or to run with the pack, knowing they'll tear you apart if you limp? In the guild's world, freedom is an illusion, safety is a joke, and friendship is just another word for leverage. Still, as long as you obey, as long as you keep your head low and your blade sharp, the guild's protection is real. Nobles fear you but can't touch you. Guards suspect you but can't prove a thing. And while rivals vanish in alleys and prisons mysteriously open for you, you remember why you joined in the first place. Power, money, skill, belonging. The guild gives all these things at a price you only realize years too late. Guild politics are brutal rival. Killers undercut your price or accidentally expose you to guards. Your final lesson in this world of hidden blades comes not from a master or a handler, but from watching others fail. Assassins rarely grow old, at least not ones who keep working. They vanish betrayed by an informant, cornered by guards, poisoned by rivals, or worst of all, killed by their own guild. You've seen it yourself. A man who once swaggered through every tavern in town, boasting of jobs nobody should boast about, suddenly found in a rain-filled ditch, his throat cut with surgical precision. No coin pouch, no token, no witnesses, just silence. The older ones who do survive, they know when to vanish. They fake their own deaths, change their names, shave their beards, grow new ones. They turn into humble merchants in faraway towns or monks who suddenly found faith. Some even train apprentices, not out of generosity but because teaching buys them protection. If you're useful to the guild, you live. The moment you stop being useful, you're a liability. This life warps how you see the world. A crowded marketplace is no longer a place for shopping. It's a map of exits and vantage points. A dinner invitation is never about food. It's about who's watching, who's listening, who might slip something into your wine. Every smiling face could hide suspicion. Even the sound of a lute drifting from a tavern door makes you think. Perfect cover for steel sliding from a sheath. Your reputation becomes a second shadow. Nobles whisper your name in fear. Merchants cross streets to avoid your gaze, and yet you can never openly enjoy that power. Step into the light and you're just a target with a price on your head. You learn to live between worlds, feared but never famous, rich but never secure. Sometimes you remember why you started. Maybe it was hunger, maybe vengeance. Maybe you just wanted coin in your hand and boots without holes. But now you carry secrets heavier than gold. The guild knows everything you've done. They hold it over you like a dagger, not to strike, but to remind you that you'll never truly walk away. And yet, deep down, there's a certain grim pride. You've mastered an art few even believe exists. You can slip past guards who never sleep, enter rooms locked from the inside, kill without sound or struggle. You can vanish into a crowd as though you were never there. But power like this comes with one last truth, whispered by every assassin who's lived long enough to say it. The blade you hold today is the same blade that will one day find your back. Whether it's a rival, a noble with longer reach, or your own guild tying off a loose thread, the life of an assassin always ends the same way, quietly, efficiently, without ceremony. Still, until that day comes, you move like a shadow among shadows. You take your coin, complete your contracts, follow the guild's rules, and never ask questions you don't want answered. And as long as you walk this razor's edge, you remain what you chose to become. Death in human shape, unseen, unheard, and unforgettable only to those who won't live long enough to tell. Urban nightmares, crowded alleys echo, cobblestones trip you, and rats eat your last loaf. You crouch in the shadow of a half-ruined cloister, mud soaking into your boots, trying not to sneeze as cold rain seeps down the back of your neck. Somewhere nearby, someone's already been paid to make sure you never see sunrise again. The Guild of Blades, yes, they have a guild, because everything in the Middle Ages had a guild, from bakers to bell ringers, has decided you're a liability. One too many questions, one too many unpaid dues, and now you're prey in your own profession. Historians still argue whether formal assassin brotherhoods were structured like actual trade guilds, or more like loose, murderous drinking clubs with initiation fees. Either way, you're realizing that family in this line of work means family that will stab you for missing a meeting. The only warning you get is a flutter of a cloak and a wet thump of feet behind you. You spin, knife ready, but there's no cinematic duel, just a scramble, a grunt, and someone trying to garrote you with a leather thong that smells faintly of goat. It's not elegant, and it's certainly not noble. You remember that fringe tidbit about Venetian poison rings, tiny hollow bezels filled with crushed herbs, and briefly wish your opponent were that theatrical instead of simply strong. Rain makes your grip slip, your blade skitters off stone, and for a terrifying heartbeat you think this is it. But a loose roof tile comes to your rescue, crashing down and startling your attacker long enough for you to shove them off and sprint through the dripping archways. The mud drags at your legs as you run, heart pounding, wondering if that code of silence you signed with a thumbprint counts for much when everyone's already talking about killing you. Somewhere in the dark, a bell tolls midnight, reminding you that monasteries are still awake for vigils while you're out here inventing new ways to ruin your cloak. Not exactly the glamorous life promised in whispered tavern stories of gold-lined daggers and silk-masked. Rural misery, sleep in barn, swamps, or fields while peasants eye you like a wolf. You duck into a tannery to hide, an awful choice, because nothing covers your trail like the overwhelming stench of rotting hides and lye. The workers, asleep on rough benches, barely stir as you slip past the vats. In truth, no medieval assassin worth the name would willingly spend more than a minute here, but at least your pursuers won't either. That's one upside of working in an age before deodorant and industrial ventilation. As you crouch behind a barrel of lime, you recall that guild records, where they exist, mention quiet fees, essentially a payment to ensure no one takes contracts inside certain protected zones like churches, marketplaces during fair days, or amusingly enough, bathhouses. The logic was simple. You don't want to terrify paying customers who are already naked and slippery. Assassins in these guilds treated killing almost like carpentry, a craft with its own professional standards. Break the code, and suddenly you became the project everyone wanted to finish. In the tannery's half-light, you unwrap the one piece of real tech you own, a small crossbow called a tiller, portable enough to fit under a cloak. Forget the fancy poison darts of legend. Most killers in this century preferred plain bolts. Reliable, cheap, and deadly, though painfully slow to reload. You remember hearing of German Fetchbücher fight manuals that showed how to use daggers, swords, and even improvised weapons for ambush. None of them ever mentioned ducking behind a barrel of foul sludge, but here you are. Your pulse slows as the footsteps fade. For now you've shaken them, but you know the guild will not forget. Even the infamous Sicara of antiquity, the dagger men of Judea, couldn't keep their secrets forever, and your world is no different. Somewhere in the distance, a cock crows much too early, or maybe it's just a drunk trying to sing. You're alive, which is nice, but you're also cornered. By sunrise, someone will have paid. Armor is a joke. One clanky breastplate makes sneaking impossible, yet going unarmored is suicide. You slip out of the tannery before dawn, your cloak stiff with dried filth. In this line of work, you learn quickly that smelling terrible is better than being dead, though not by much. Narrow alleys funnel you toward the riverfront, where barges creak at their moorings and sluggish water carries more secrets than any guild ledger. On a half-rotted pier, you meet a contact, not a fellow assassin, but a ferryman who knows better than to ask questions. He gestures to a crate. Inside lies a bundle of wax tablets, coded messages passed between guild chapters. This is the kind of information people kill to protect. You glance at the marks carved into the wax, contracts sealed with symbols, not names. Crow's feather, ash blade, silent hand. Guild nicknames that sound poetic until you meet the people behind them. The ferryman explains, in a voice so flat it could be carved from wood, that the guild wants you gone. Not killed necessarily, just vanished. But you've already seen too much. You recall how medieval rulers alternated between hearing assassins and burning them at the stake. In one decade, you're a valuable tool of statecraft. In the next, you're a criminal who threatens the peace. Monarchs love to pretend their hands stayed clean while their gold bought daggers in the dark. You take the crate and consider your next move. If you deliver these tablets to a rival guild, you'll have enough leverage to buy protection, or a swift death if they decide you're not trustworthy. Somewhere behind you, church bells toll prime, summoning honest folk to morning prayer. For you, prayer is pointless. Even if saints were listening, none would bless a career built on silence and steel. You board the barge. The ferryman pushes off into the fog, or dipping in quiet rhythm. Beneath the river's dark surface, you imagine centuries of discarded blades, bone handles eroded by silt. The tools of your trade don't last forever, but the fear they spread clings to every cobblestone, every whispered rumor. Religious complications, priests curse you from pulpits, and some targets hide in sanctuaries. The fog parts as the barge drifts downstream, and you glimpse the city gates shrinking behind you. Each tower looks less like a fortification and more like a gallows, ready to claim your neck. You've seen too many of your kind dragged there in chains, not for murder itself, but for the crime of killing without permission. That's the difference between a royal executioner and an assassin. One is paid in coin, the other in coin and lies. Your ferryman friend says nothing. He knows that every word on the river carries farther than it should. Instead, he hums an off-key tune as you check your gear. A narrow dagger, a poisoned ring, a vial of crushed nightshade hidden in a hollow reed. Medieval poisoners were crude but effective, no antidotes, no finesse, just bitter brews that burned through the gut like fire. By mid-morning, the barge docks at a small riverside market. Here, no one cares who you are. Peddlers shout over each other, offering salt fish, rough wool, and pewter cups that gleam like treasure in the sun. But you're not here to shop. You're here to disappear. You trade the crate of wax tablets for a sealed parchment. Safe passage to a guild house 2 towns away. Safe passage is always a lie. It really means we'll kill you last. As you make your way inland, past fields littered with scarecrows and crows that don't scare easily, you think about how rulers used assassins as tools of foreign policy. One lord hires a blade to kill his rival. The rival hires 3 blades to kill the first lord. Both blame bandits when the job is done. Assassins learn quickly. Loyalty is an expense no one can afford. You reach a ruined watchtower by dusk. Smoke curls from its base, not from a hearth but from a warning fire. Someone knows you're coming. You pause, cloak drawn tight, listening for movement. In the silence, your own heartbeat feels like climate versus cloaks. Freezing sleet soaks your disguise. Summer heat bakes your brain under a hood. Night falls so quickly it feels deliberate, as if someone snuffed out the sun just to make your path harder to see. The ruined watchtower looms above you, its stones blackened not by fire but by age and betrayal. You wait in the hedgerow, crouched low, letting your eyes adjust. There, a glint, faint but sharp. Not a torch, a blade. Whoever waits inside isn't cold. You creep forward, step by cautious step, boots sinking into wet earth. Medieval assassins didn't often rely on swords. Too loud, too clumsy. Knives, garrotes, powders, tools for slipping past armor and bone without warning. You remind yourself of that as you loosen your dagger in its sheath. Inside, the tower smells of rain-soaked ash and mold. The ceiling's gone, open to the stars, but shadows cling to the walls like thieves afraid of the light. A shape moves fast, low. You sidestep just in time to feel a blade whistle past your ear. The assassin vanishes behind a pillar. Trained, patient, a mirror of yourself. You speak first, softly, in the cant of the guild. Whose coin pays? No answer. only the slow drip of water from some crack above. So you change tactics. It's bad business to kill a friend on the road. A figure emerges, slender, masked, dagger reversed in the hand. You recognize the stance instantly. Not an enemy, but competition. That makes them even more dangerous. Walk away, they whisper, voice roughened by smoke or fear, maybe both. The parchment's cursed. Cursed? In medieval Europe, curses traveled almost as easily as rumors. Kings poisoned rivals, then claimed divine punishment had struck them down. Was this warning real, or just a trick to make you hesitate? You make a choice. In a single motion, you throw dust from your hollow reed, not poison, but ground chalk. It blinds for seconds, no more. Enough time to disarm without killing. Your opponent drops their blade, coughing, and you press your dagger to their throat. Who sent you? Their answer chills you more than any night wind. The same Lord who gave you that parchment. Payment delays hurt. Chasing down your own employer is harder than killing his enemy. The revelation lands heavier than steel plate. The noble who pressed the parchment into your hand, smiling, wine on his breath, is the same man who sent this rival to slit your throat. Not unusual in the Middle Ages. Assassins weren't loyal to lords. Lords weren't loyal to anyone. A contract could vanish faster than ink on wet vellum. You keep the dagger at the rival's throat, but your grip tightens in anger, not fear. Why pay me and send you? You hiss. They're testing you, the assassin rasps, seeing if you're worth the gold or worth the grave. That would fit perfectly with how powerful nobles operated. They never risked their own necks. They used others like grindstones, test the edge, then discard the blade. You think fast. In medieval terms, betrayal was just politics with less ceremony. If you kill this rival, you'll look efficient but predictable. If you let them live, they might warn the Lord you're not as obedient as you seem. And if you join forces temporarily, you could flip the entire game on its head. Name, you ask. Matthias, they cough. Guild of St. Blaise, a professional order, not just a sellsword. Their loyalty lies with coin and contracts like yours, not crowns or crests. You sheath your dagger and offer a hand. Then we're either both dead by sunrise or both rich. Matthias hesitates, then grips your wrist, a sign of truce, not trust. Together you climb the ruined stairs to scan the horizon. A pale moon shows the road ahead, forest, marsh, and then the walled town where your patron waits, smiling behind his lies. If he expects only you to arrive, imagine his face when you bring the very assassin he sent to kill you, alive and armed. But you'll need to reach that town first, and medieval travel isn't kind at night. Bandits, wolves, tollkeepers who charge a fee with a blade in hand. The parchment burns in your pouch. What secret is worth paying 2 killers to fetch, and maybe to bury with them? You agree to walk together at least until dawn. In the distance, church bells toll midnight, not for prayer, for warning. Someone, somewhere nearby. Accidental hero moments. Sometimes you stop a crime by accident, ruining your bad reputation. You and Matthias slip through the moonlit forest, every sound amplified, owls hunting, twigs cracking underfoot, wind sighing through ash trees like a ghost that never learned to rest. He walks light, almost noiseless, a professional who knows how to vanish into darkness. You match his pace, though every step reminds you how much mud clings to your boots. Roads in the Middle Ages are treacherous at night. No patrols, no lamps, no friendly travelers, just ruts filled with water, fallen branches, and worse things that wait for fools to stumble by. You stick to the edge of the path, letting the trees mask your silhouettes. Matthias whispers, "There's a toll gate ahead, not royal, private," which is medieval code for a gang pretending to collect taxes. Bandits who have set up a pole across the road and demand silver from anyone dumb enough to pass. Refuse, and you vanish into a ditch, never to be seen again. You both crouch low, approaching the gate. A greasy torch burns in an iron bracket, illuminating 3 shapes, men in patched mail, faces shadowed by cowls. One smokes a clay pipe, the ember glowing red as his lungs fill. "What's the plan?" Matthijs murmurs. His voice is calm, but his hand rests on the hilt of his short sword. "You weigh your options. Pay the toll if they believe your coins are real and not clipped. Fight through, risky, loud, bloody. Sneak around, safer, but you'd have to leave the road and risk boggy ground." A fourth man appears from the hut beside the gate, yawning and stretching. His eyes catch the faint glint of moonlight on your steel. "Oi," he calls. "Travelers, step forward and pay, or we make you pay proper." Matthijs smiles faintly. "I hate improvised fees." Before you can answer, a sound cuts through the night, distant hooves pounding fast, more than one horse. Whoever's coming down the road is in a hurry, and these bandits suddenly forget you exist. They scramble to lower the pole and shout to one another. Rich prey approaches, and they're not about to share. Opportunity, you gesture to Matthijs. Either slip past while the bandits are distracted, or wait and see who these riders are. Could be knights, could be the Lord's men, could be worse. The torchlight flickers as wind swirls, throwing jagged shadows. The wrong victim problem. Historians still argue whether assassins ever actually hit who they meant to. You grab Matthijs by the sleeve and pull him off the road just as the riders thunder into view. The torchlight catches the gleam of polished helms, not the dull rust of vagabonds. These are armored men, lances upright, capes snapping in the wind, not bandits but household knights, traveling fast under cover of darkness. Their horses snort clouds of steam in the cold air as hooves scatter gravel across the road. The bandits' confidence vanishes instantly. You see the man with the pipe fumble to kick dirt over his torch. Another dives for the ditch. The fourth tries to haul up the topple too late. The lead knight barely breaks stride, couching his lance. Wood splinters, iron shatters, and one would-be tax collector flies backward with a scream, tumbling like a sack of grain. Matthijs doesn't flinch. He watches the armored men pass, counting under his breath. 6, 7, 8, crest of Lord Valoran, he glances at you. "Not someone I want to meet tonight." We cut through the hedge and keep moving. You push through thorny branches, feeling them tear at your cloak. The ground beyond is uneven, soft with last week's rain. Your boot sinks deep and comes up sucking, but you keep going, breath quick, trying to stay silent. Behind you, the knights dismount to chase the surviving bandits into the trees. Their shouts echo like thunder, steel ringing as blades clear scabbards. The path you follow winds downhill to a shallow creek, its water moon-silver and cold as melted ice. Matthijs splashes through without hesitation. You follow, feeling your feet go numb instantly. "They won't follow us here," he says, too busy cleaning up scum on their own doorstep. On the far bank, he stops to catch his breath and check the night sky. "We make for St. Benoit's Priory. They won't refuse travelers, even this late. Worst they'll do is put us in the hayloft and mutter about sinners on the road." It's an hour's walk to the Priory. Along the way you pass shuttered cottages, smell distant smoke from hearth fires, hear a dog bark and fall silent. You're bone-tired when the Priory walls finally rise from the mist, low stone topped with moss. A lantern burns near the gate. Matthijs raps gently with the pommel of his dagger. A wicket opens. A sleepy monk peers out. After a quick exchange of Latin murmurs, the gate creaks wide. You're led through a silent courtyard to the guest house, bare walls, straw pallets, but blessedly warm. You lie down fully clothed, boots and all. Your head barely touches the sack of hay they call a pillow before you're out cold, the scent of wood smoke in your nose and the memory of steel in the night still fresh in your ears. You wake to the sound of bells, soft at first, then rising, as if the very stones of the Priory hum with them. Matthijs is already up, dousing his face with cold water from a wooden basin. "Prime bell," he mutters. "Too early for decent folk, but monks have their own idea of time." A young novice brings coarse bread and a bowl of thin pottage. You eat without complaint. Warm food after a night like that feels like a feast. The monk says little, only warning you to keep to the main road after leaving. The woods aren't safe, he adds, a pointed glance at your muddy cloak suggesting he knows exactly where you've been. Outside the gate, morning fog clings to the hedgerows. The road slopes gently upward, and in the distance you can see smoke curling from chimneys of a market town, the first real settlement in days. Matthijs grins. Coin, bread, maybe even a real bed if we're lucky, but keep your purse tight. Towns have pickpockets as well as priests. The closer you get, the more crowded the road becomes. Peddlers trundle carts stacked with onions and clay pots. A troupe of jugglers practices on the move, tossing colored balls as they walk. You pass pilgrims with badges sewn to their cloaks, murmuring prayers as they go. And always, somewhere behind, the echo of horseshoes, not close enough to see, but close enough to remember last night's armored patrol. At the town gate, 2 guards inspect arrivals. One asks your business, the other checks your boots and cloak for contraband or hidden goods they can fine you for. Matthijs answers smoothly, calling himself a messenger and you his clerk. It works. They wave you through with a bored glance. Inside, narrow streets twist like tangled rope. Half-timbered houses lean inward as if gossiping above your head. The air is a stew of smells: smoke, fish, tallow candles, baking bread, and the sharp tang of tanners' vats. Best find a tavern first, Matthijs says, before all the good beds are taken by drovers and dung haulers. The good bed turns out to be a mattress barely wider than a bench, stuffed with straw that crackles when you touch it. The innkeeper eyes you both warily until Matthijs drops a coin on the counter. Suddenly, his smile blooms like spring sunshine. You spend the afternoon wandering the market square. A tooth drawer shouts for patience beside a man selling miracle charms. Children chase a trained bear that dances for scraps. You spot a scribe offering to write letters for those who can't. Most folk glance at him, shake their heads, and move on. That evening the tavern fills fast. Farmers in from the fields drink rough ale and sing loud, badly tuned songs. A fiddler plays a tune so fast his bow squeals. Matthijs keeps you close, muttering, "Too many eyes in here." You see why. Men in the corner wear swords not for show, and one scarred fellow never touches his cup, just watches everyone else. Later upstairs, you bolt the door with a wedge of wood and try to sleep. But the night carries sounds through the floorboards: laughter, a scuffle, boots on the stairs, then silence again. Even safe walls don't make. At dawn, the market town is already stirring. Carts creak toward the square, hooves clop on the cobblestones, and the smell of baking bread drifts through the half-open shutters of your room. Matthijs is awake before you, packing quickly, and urges you not to linger. Towns are fine for a night, he says, but coin flows out of your purse faster than water out of a cracked bucket. After a quick breakfast of ale-soaked bread, you slip back onto the road. The land beyond the town opens into broad fields edged with hedges, dotted with wind-bent trees. Peasants are already at work with mattocks and hoes, their backs bowed in the cool morning. A few glance up as you pass, curiosity flickering, but they return quickly to their rows. Strangers are best left alone. Matthijs sets a brisk pace. "We'll follow the King's Road for a while. Patrols make it safer, though I'd rather not meet them close." His words prove true when, by mid-morning, you hear the distant drumming of hooves. A mounted party appears, not armored knights this time, but tax collectors with ledgers strapped to their saddles. They stop a farmer driving a cart, weighing his goods and scribbling notes. Matthijs tugs your sleeve, and the two of you step aside into the grass until the men ride on. By midday, clouds gather thick as wet wool. A drizzle sets in, turning the road to slick mud. Your cloak clings to your shoulders and the air smells of rain and horse sweat. When the weather worsens, Matthijs scans the hedgerows for shelter. At last you find an abandoned charcoal burner's hut, little more than a lean-to of wattle and sod. It's cramped, the floor littered with ashes, but it's dry. You wait out the storm there, gnawing on yesterday's bread. Thunder rolls far off, softened by the trees. Matthijs dozes lightly, his hand never far from the dagger at his belt. When the rain eases, you step outside, blinking at the wash-clean sky. The world smells sharper, greener, as though the earth itself has taken a deep breath. Toward evening, you spot another band of travelers ahead, a family, by the look of them, pushing a handcart piled with bundles. Matthijs greets them cautiously, exchanging a few words. They are fleeing bad harvests in the north, hopping to find work further south. Their faces are pinched with weariness, but they share a heel of cheese with you, and you help them push the cart over a rut in the road. As darkness falls, you all camp together beneath an overhanging oak. A small fire keeps the chill away. The children fall asleep first, curled against their mother. Matthijs takes first watch, humming softly, eyes scanning the shadows. You lie awake listening to the rustle of leaves, the faint hoot of an owl, and the distant, uneasy sound of wolves. Even in company, the road feels lonely. The next morning begins with stiff joints and damp clothes, but a sky bright enough to promise fair weather. The family you camp beside heads east, while you and Matthijs turn south once more. The road grows narrower and less traveled, the hedgerows climbing high and wild on either side. Mid-morning, you reach a shallow ford. The water is cold and fast, swollen from the previous day's rain. You take off your shoes, wadding carefully, feeling the pebbles roll underfoot. Matthijs shoulders your pack without complaint, though he grumbles that rivers make fine places for brigands to loiter. His words seem half jest, but his eyes never stop scanning the tree line. By midday you reach a stretch of lonely heath, purple with late summer heather. Wind combs through it with a low sigh. Here there is no cover, no cottages, just sky and scrub and the far-off shimmer of smoke where someone, farmer, traveler, or outlaw, has lit a fire. You pass no one for hours. Hunger drives you to stop near a tangle of rocks. Matthijs digs out the last of the rye bread and a twist of salt pork, sharing it in silence. The meal is rough, but you've grown used to such fare. Your body no longer aches for rich stews or soft beds. Life on the road strips your expectations down to the bone. Later that afternoon, you come upon an old pilgrim shrine at a crossroads, a weathered stone figure of St. Crispin, its face rubbed smooth by time and wind. Someone has left flowers, now dried and brittle, in a clay cup at its base. Matthijs bows his head briefly, not out of deep piety but out of long habit. Best not to offend any saint watching the roads, he mutters. As dusk approaches, you hear singing carried on the wind, coarse voices, the kind that come with beer mugs and careless tempers. Ahead, tucked behind an oak grove, stands a roadside alehouse. It is little more than a crooked timber shack with smoke leaking from its chimney and a pair of carts parked outside. Matthijs looks wary. Too many strangers in one place, but it's dry and they'll have food. His stomach rumbles audibly. You decide to risk it. Inside, the single room glows with firelight. A sour beer smell hangs in the air. A broad-shouldered innkeeper slaps down mugs and bread, no questions asked. A pair of farmhands sit in the corner, arguing over dice. You keep to yourselves, speaking little, eating steadily. It feels almost safe, almost, until the door creaks open and two men enter, eyes sweeping the room too sharply to belong to harmless travelers. Matthijs stiffens. "We won't linger," he says under his breath. After finishing your meal, you slip outside into the dark, finding a patch of ground well away from the road where the stars gleam cold and bright. Tonight there's no fire. The risk of notice is too high. You sleep under the open sky, listening to Matthijs breathe evenly beside you, though you're not sure he's truly asleep. The road feels sharper now, as though danger has crept closer, unseen but awake. At dawn, mist curls low over the fields, blurring every hedge and hollow into shapes that seem to move. Matthijs shakes the dew off his cloak and checks the road both ways before letting you step back onto it. "Keep your eyes open," he says. His voice is quiet but edged. That alehouse has left him uneasy. The lane twists through farmland, the soil freshly plowed and smelling rich after last night's damp. Here and there you glimpse distant figures. A woman driving geese, a boy chopping wood, a plowman bent double with his oxen. None look up as you pass. Peasants on their own land rarely trouble strangers, but strangers rarely trust anyone either. By midday, the road dips into a marshy stretch where your boots suck at the mud with every step. A rotten wooden footbridge carries you over a sluggish stream. You pause in the middle, feeling it sway under your weight, listening to frogs croak in the reeds. Matthijs keeps glancing over his shoulder. When you reach firmer ground, you both hear hoofbeats. Not the steady rhythm of a farmer on a workhorse. These are sharp, fast, purposeful. With no hedge tall enough to hide behind, you crouch in a shallow ditch as two riders thunder past, their cloaks snapping like banners. One of them carries a spear. Neither man looks your way, but you stay low until the sound fades to nothing. The afternoon wears on, gray clouds rolling in again. You come to a village too poor even to boast a tavern, just a scatter of wattle huts and a smoke-blackened chapel. At the edge of the green, an old woman sits spinning flax, her face wrinkled as tree bark. She gives a thin smile as you pass, but asks no questions. Matthijs trades a few kind words with a thatcher mending a roof, and for the price of helping lift a bundle of reeds, you're shown a dry barn to sleep in. The floor smells of straw and sheep, but compared to the open road it's a luxury. You share a cold supper, hard cheese, and a crust saved from earlier, while rain patters on the roof. As night deepens, Matthijs finally speaks what he's been thinking since yesterday. Those men in the alehouse weren't farmers. They were watching, weighing everyone in the room. Could be tax men hunting smugglers or thieves looking for easy prey. His hand rests lightly on the hilt of his belt knife, even as he lies back on the straw. Either way, best we stay ahead of them. You sleep in fits and starts, waking to every creak of the rafters, every rustle of small animals in the hay. Once you think you hear boots outside, but it might just be the rain dripping from the eaves. By morning, you're not sure if the threat was real or only born of weary imagination. Still, when dawn breaks pale and cold, neither of you lingers. The road calls, and so does the need to keep moving faster now, as if some shadow is walking behind you, patient. You leave the barn before the village fully wakes, hopping to avoid questions. A dog barks once as you slip down the lane, but no one stirs from the crooked huts. The air smells of wet earth and smoke from banked hearths. Matthijs sets a quick pace, his eyes constantly scanning the hedgerows. By mid-morning you pass a wayside shrine, just a weathered cross nailed to a post, draped with wildflowers now half-wilted. Someone has left a small loaf of bread at its base, an offering for safe travel. Matthijs mutters a brief word of thanks, not so much to heaven as to fortune itself, then breaks off a corner of the loaf and tucks it away. The road grows busier as you near a market town. You see carts piled with onions, peasants driving pigs, a peddler leading a pack horse jangling with brass pots. But Matthijs steers you off the main way, down a narrower lane flanked by thorn bushes. Best not be seen until we must, he says. In the distance, church bells toll the noon hour, rolling across the fields. The sky clears at last, bright and sharp after days of rain. You crest a small rise and see the town ahead, ringed by a shallow ditch and a timber palisade. Beyond it, smoke rises from chimneys, and you catch the faint sound of hammers ringing on iron. Before entering, Matthijs insists on stopping at a pond to wash the road grime from your face and hands. Look less like wanderers, he says, and fewer people will take note of us. His caution makes your stomach tighten. Those riders, those men in the alehouse, they are not forgotten. At the gate, no guard stops you, only a bored lad collecting a penny toll. Inside, the streets are muddy and loud with trade. You pass stalls of salted fish, baskets of apples, bolts of coarse wool. A tooth drawer shouts his services, holding aloft a set of grim iron pliers. Children chase each other between carts, and somewhere nearby a lute is playing, its melody half drowned by the din. Matthijs ducks into a narrow alley and leads you to a baker's shop. The smell of fresh bread makes your mouth water, but he doesn't buy any. Instead, he whispers with the baker, an old acquaintance, and gets directions to a certain inn at the far end of town. Not the best, he murmurs after, but quiet. The kind of place no one asks your name. You reach it by dusk, the crooked signboard swinging in the wind, painted with a faded stag. Inside, the common room is dim, almost empty. A single tallow candle burns on each table, dripping wax into the grain of the wood. You order thin stew and sit in a corner where you can watch the door. All evening, only 3 men come and go, locals by the look of them, too weary from their work to pay strangers any mind. But Matthijs still keeps one hand near his knife as you finish your meal. Later, upstairs, the inn's tiny loft creaks under your weight, the smell of smoke and ale rising through the boards. Before sleep takes you, Matthijs says, we'll leave before dawn. If anyone's following, they'll expect us to move at first light, but we'll be gone while they still dream. His tone is calm, but his eyes glint with unease. You lie awake a long time, listening to the wind against the shutters, wondering if every step farther from home is leading you into danger, or